Hey there, Skilled Survival Alliance. It's Brent. I'm back with Just In Case Jack, and today we're going to talk about a very important topic in survival, and it's one that I'm sure you've heard of before. You've heard everyone say you can go 3 weeks without food and 3 days at best without water. So we're going to chat about water and water sources, and maybe a few water sources that you might not have ever thought of before. So, how you doing today, Jack?
Hey Brent, I'm doing great. It's beautiful fall afternoon, evening, and excited that we get to sit down and chat about one of my favorite topics.
Yeah, it's a really important topic, and it's one that we everybody needs to focus on, and he needs to get right, or else, I hate to say it, but it might be your demise. So water and water purification is a topic that gets talked a lot about in survival, and I think because of the frequency of discussion, sometimes it's overlooked. And one thing that I was hoping we could focus on today is some unique angles to getting water. Um, Sometimes I think people make it a little too hard on themselves. They try to figure out, where's the nearest freshwater source? How can I get there and evade all the armed and angry mobs outside as I go fill up my water jugs? When really there's a lot of perfectly good water sources that they have right in their own home, in a last resort situation. Uh, so I was hoping we could, try to maybe focus on sharing some of those ideas to our coalition here.
Yeah, you made a couple great points. What we're going to talk about today when it comes to water is that whole idea of, the taps are totally dry, right? You're turning the water on and, there's no pressure anymore. Um, that would be due probably most likely due to some kind of major long-term electrical outage where the electrical pumps aren't able to fill up the water towers any longer. So eventually that water would then run out, and then you would be left without any kind of pressure or new water coming in your home. And then, like you mentioned, even if you do have a pond or river or stream or creek that's nearby, for some people it might be in a location where a lot of people might be going to that location to get their water, which obviously would expose you to, more people, and they might not be friendly. So having some options, some last resort type options within your own home, is a good exercise, and that's what we want to go through today. I have actually 11 of them that I've identified that we should probably go through in detail.
That sounds great. Why don't we just get started? What's the first one?
Well, the first one is a little bit. It's one you have to really get after right away, and it's not going to provide a lot of water, but it's overlooked often. And it's the ice cubes and freezer buildup. So
Right.
any kind of ice, once it's melted, can be collected. Like I said, it depends on your freezer. I have a big deep freezer in my basement. I don't rely on that for my food storage for long term, but it's still there for convenience. But it has a decent layer of ice and frost buildup. And if I knew that there was an event that I felt like could be a longer term type situation, powers out and it's definitely shit hits the fan. One of the things I'm going to be doing is scraping that down and putting that in buckets and letting that thaw, and then I could have a couple buckets worth of water right there.
Right. Now, is it important to scrape that down and get it into a bucket, or can if you have a deep freeze with a top lid, you basically have one massive bucket? Would it be
Yeah,
okay just to let that melt and pool at the bottom?
the problem is if you have food in there and it starts going bad, like obviously, unless you have a generator to keep that freezer going,
Right.
right? Let's just say you don't, then that's gonna melt, and there's gonna be meats in there. Like most people put meat in their freezers, right?
Right.
So if you have a turkey on the bottom, and 2 days later you have all this nice thawed water down there, but it's sitting there with a thawed turkey. You don't want to drink that. You want to avoid that situation. So if you want to pull all the food out, then that's one way. But you could scrape it down, and you're probably going to lose all that food in a long-term electrical outage anyway. I mean, you can save what you can eat, cook what you can eat, and if you don't have any electricity, then you'll be cooking over fires and stuff like that. But um, that's the downside of leaving the ice in there just to melt in the bottom of the freezer.
Right. So you really got to be proactive if once the power goes out and you think you might have a bit of a water pinch, yeah, and get
And the
down
other
there
part with that is
and
like it's a trade-off too, because there might be a lot of other things that you'll want to be doing, right?
right.
Obviously, in this case, you'll be bugging in. You're not bugging out, or else you wouldn't worry about this. But if you're bugging in and you have all your other provisions taken care of, if you leave your freezer closed up, it'll stay frozen for quite a while.
Right.
So it's not like the first thing you have to do, but it's definitely if you're worried about especially if you live in a desert environment where water is going to be a very limited resource, then this is one of the first things you want to do because any extra water could just give you that advantage you need.
All right. One down. What's number two?
Number two would be your hot water heater tank. So it's more and more popular nowadays for people to get the tankless water heaters, which
Right.
are great for efficiency. But I think the majority of people still have the traditional large in their basement or in their water closet, if you will, water tank heater.
Right.
And that's just a huge reservoir of water. That would last you a pretty long time managed properly.
Right. No, I replaced my hot water tank about 2 years ago, and I looked at those inline tankless water heaters, and there was two main reasons why I decided against it. One was because the groundwater in my city is really cold, and it doesn't actually do a very good job of getting the water hot enough to enjoy a shower. So what they actually recommend is to put two in line, right? So put two in series,
So you preheat it and then you
and then you
finally,
heat it again, right? And so then you're looking at a really expensive system.
right.
But the other reason, and this is equally as important as not having a hot shower, is I looked at it as I'm losing a huge water source in the event of an emergency. So for me, my family, it made sense to stick with the hot water tank, and we know we've got a huge reservoir of water in the basement if
Exactly.
if all else fails, right?
Right. Last resort, it's there.
Okay, what's next?
Another one that's overlooked often because it's not like the water tank's obviously a larger reservoir and that's going to last a long time. These won't last as long, but you definitely don't want to overlook them because every bit of water matters in certain circumstances. So canned goods, especially veggies, are canned in a lot of water actually. If you open a can of beans and most of the time you drain out the water, right? Before you go and cook them or eat them or whatever. Well, that's good water. You should drink that water. And that's like the perfect amount of water to say, okay, we're going to eat beans tonight. That's what's on the menu now that we're in the part of our survival scenario where we're rationing our food, right? And so, don't let that go to waste. Don't dump that on in the sink. Don't, even though that might be your typical practice in everyday scenarios in normal times, that needs to be something you drink and stay hydrated with.
Oh, that's a great idea, and that's one
And
that I definitely didn't think of. We
right,
we eat quite a bit of beans, and we use for convenience sake we use canned black beans, canned pinto beans, and yeah, the first thing I do is I throw those beans in a strainer and give them a really good rinse. So I guess if it was a survival scenario and I continued to do that practice, I would be guilty of getting rid of some obviously very valuable fluids.
right. And it's like if you open a can of beans and there's water in there, that's about the perfect amount to go with your meal, to be
Right.
honest. Like it's going to be flavored. It's not going to taste. It's going to taste whatever the contents of that can is. It's going to have that flavor to it, but it's gonna taste amazing. If you're majorly dehydrated, you won't even notice. It'll be great.
Right, and a nice byproduct of that is beans are a nice source of protein, and one that doesn't go bad like meat does. So,
Hmm.
when you don't have that fridge or freezer and your meat's going bad, you can rely on vegetables that are high protein content, and beans are definitely one of those vegetables, and legumes too. So, canned beans, canned legumes, in a shorter term situation is going to provide you, like you said, both liquid and, like I said, protein. So, hey, win-win.
So another area that's kind of similar to the hot water tank, or at least a part of that whole system, is the standing water in your home's pipes. So um, even though the pressure might have gone to zero. Anything that's in your house, especially any house with a backflow preventer. And for those who don't understand what a backflow preventer is, it's where liquids can go only one direction in a pipe. And people put them, most of the time they're installed on the front of houses so the water can enter into your house and into your pipe system. But if something were to happen where the pressure was interrupted in the street, like the public piping that enters in your house, if something were to happen and pressure was lost, the water that came into your house would not be able to come back out into the public area. Okay, so it's like a one way for water entering your house. It can't go backwards, and that's a backflow preventer. Well, what that also does is it means that if the taps run dry, then there's going to be some standing water in your home. So you need to find the lowest point of your system, and then get a wrench, break it open, and make sure you have a lot of buckets or barrels to collect all that runs out.
Yeah, I agree.
And the amount you collect is going to depend on the size of your home. Um, just be prepared for more water than you think. I had to do this in my basement to do some work on my plumbing. So I have a two-story home, and um, you know, when you turn the shower on upstairs, it's right there, it's ready to go. So that's all filled with water. But I need to work on something that was on a lower level. So I went to the very lowest point, and I actually had a sink there, but I had to turn my main water off, and then I had to open that lowest point up, and it just ran forever. And it was basically draining my whole system so that I could work on it at the location I need to work on without it, spraying all over and getting the whole place wet. So it just amazed me how much actually came out. So just be prepared to collect all of it.
Yeah, I've I've been surprised with this a couple of times, and I've never learned my lesson. I've I've done it some plumbing work, and every time I get a little bucket, and I think, oh, it's going to be enough, and it never is. The other thing is, it doesn't typically go where you think it's going to go. So you got to be quick and nimble. But yeah, no,
Right.
another great source of water for sure.
You got to funnel it into a barrel or a bucket, and make sure you collect it all, or else it's going to hit the floor, and you can't really collect it from the floor very well.
No, that'd be a little tough. So I've got 4 down. What's number 5?
Number 5 is your backyard sprinkler system. Now, I know everybody doesn't have a sprinkler system, so this might not apply. But if you do happen to have a sprinkler system, then it's going to have some standing water in it. Each fall, you're supposed to drain your sprinkler system anyway, especially if you live in a frost zone, which I do. So it's a whole process where you need to flush that out so that your sprinkler lines don't have water in them, which, water expands. When water expands, it will fracture your lines because it's typically, your sprinkler systems are PVC plastic pipe. So you get some expanding water in there from freezing, and they'll crack your lines. So that's a process you do anyway. So it might depend on the time of the year that you're looking to get the water, but if it happens to be in the summer and, the taps are shut off, that's a great source. You could drain your system in the middle of the summer, screw the grass. Who cares about the grass at this point, right? You're not really mowing the lawn. You need water. So drain the system, collect that water, you're good to go.
While we're outside, are there any other sources of water?
Yeah, you bet. Another one that maybe most people do have, actually, it's similar to the sprinkler system example, but every fall I take all my hoses and I drain them out. Um, I roll them up and I put them in my garage. But when I start draining them out, I just lift up one end and then work my way all the way to the other end. And I'm always amazed at how much water comes out of that too. So that's something you should collect in a basin. Again, this is depending on the time of the year that the actual event happens. If it happens in the middle of winter and your hoses are already, in the garage and stored away, this isn't going to work. But if it happens to be summer, there you go. You got some water just laying there waiting for you to collect it.
Right. And I think what's important here is, some people are out watering their raspberries or whatever, and they go through that process, and yeah, some water comes out, and some people may look at it and say, well, that's not very much water, right? But in a survival scenario where you don't have any more water, that mouthful of water or that half a cup of water or whatever you get out of there is literally a lifesaver, right?
like I said, it's surprising how much comes out. But you know, I've done it, and it's my hose. It's a pretty long hose, and it's thicker than most hoses, so it might be hold more water than most people have in their normal regular hoses. But I got about 2 gallons of water.
Wow, that's
Yeah,
impressive. I've never
yeah.
measured. Now, I'm just thinking about me when I'm out watering the garden. When I turn the spigot off, I always hold my spout open to drain the hose. I probably shouldn't be doing that, should I?
It'll only drain the pressure off, which is fine. I mean, some of that water's gonna go out, but I'm talking about the hoses on the ground. You turn the spigot off at the house, right?
Right,
And then you opened up the other end and the pressure released, right? But you
right,
didn't lift it up and drain it out, right?
right.
There's still water sitting in that.
Okay, all right. But I
So
am
that's the
giving
water
up.
I'm mostly talking about.
Gotcha, gotcha. But it might not be a terrible idea just to not release that pressure at all.
You could leave it; it'd be fine. If you left it in the winter that way, it would fracture,
Right. What?
it would puncture and explode and do damage to that hose and maybe even the faucet and the pressure spray tip. But in the middle of the summer, it doesn't matter.
Right. Gotcha.
So the next one that we're going to talk about is one that a lot of people, their initial reaction is no way, right? There's no way. And it
Oh
sounds
man,
gross,
I think I know where you're
but
going with this.
many a dog have drank, loved this water,
Very
and
true.
they had no ill effects, right?
Yeah.
So, and it's the toilet water,
Right.
you know.
Now,
It,
obviously, we can't guarantee that you are not going to have any ill effects from this, and you remember it is a toilet, and um, there are sometimes harsh toilet cleaners are used, and Flush 2000 tablets or whatever they're called. So, um, you know, obviously, this is further down the list of places to go for your water, but it is a source of water, right?
yeah, the way I like to put this one is, let's say you're in an extreme, underline the word extreme survival situation. That's not the time to be squeamish about drinking that kind of water. However, unless you're in the final throes of death and dehydration, then you might want to take some time to filter it.
Yeah, I feel
And,
like
it's your plan D, your plan E, F, whatever. It's
right.
like, your water heater is empty and all the other sources are no longer there. And, you're in a place where you can't get any kind of new water and it hasn't rained in forever. Okay, time to get the toilet water going. Assuming you haven't been using your toilets, which you probably don't want to be if sewer systems are not working properly any longer, which would be the case if you can't flush if you don't have incoming water.
Yeah, if your tank's not filling
Okay.
up, you're getting one flush, right? And then you're done.
So
So,
that's a whole nother topic for another day. And it's a shitty topic, to be honest. It's a serious one, and we'll cover that someday too.
right.
So another one that's kind of related to your plumbing system again, it's just a little bit of a different angle on that is the P-traps under your sinks. And basically the P-trap is if you open your sink, say your kitchen sink and look under there, you'll see these curly where it goes down and then comes back up pipes.
Right.
And a lot of those pipes on the bottom, a little nut that you can take off and you can actually drain them. And that's where you would access that water. And that water's, again, not going to be the nicest water, especially in like a disposal situation or something, right? Or a bathroom sink, 'cause you're going to have, that's where the hairballs sit, And it's not the nicest place to be getting water from, but they do hold water. And the way they work and the reason why they're even there in the first place is to keep the sewer smells from coming up through the water pipes. So as long as there's water in there, which due to gravity, if you look at those P-traps, they will hold water, right? And then when you open a tap, new water comes and pushes that water that's sitting there past. But it basically creates a seal of water so that smells cannot come back into your home.
Right. Thank God.
Yeah, it's a great invention.
Now,
So one obvious one that a lot of people talk about, and it's a huge opportunity if it happens to be in your backyard or even maybe a neighbor's backyard, if you have a little coalition with them, is swimming pools.
right. That's a just a small source of water.
Small, yeah, It's a nice source of water. The problem with swimming pools, if you have one, is other people are going to want to be, dipping their cups in your pool. And, you're going to have to decide who you're going to allow that to take place and who you're not, right? You have
Right.
to have a plan for that if you have a pool. So just be aware of that. It's a decision you should start thinking about now. Who will that be, and how readily are you going to defend it if things got really really bad? So most pools have either treated with chlorine or salt water. Um, Now the chlorine in the water actually is a sanitizing agent, and as long as people don't put extreme amounts of chlorine in that water, you can typically drink it without ill effect because it will be free of algae and bacteria. However, extreme amounts of chlorine is unhealthy for you. So hopefully it's not been overly treated and to a point where it would affect you. So you're just going to have to do some more research on your own ahead of time if this is something that's going to be in your possibilities. I'm no doctor. I'm no health physician. That's a disclaimer. So, but if I'm thirsty enough and it's not extremely chlorine water, me personally, I'm drinking it.
Right. Now I know I bought a testing kit and I tested my tap water just out of curiosity, and it was not really high in chlorine, but it definitely did have some chlorine content. So all I did was I just bought a water pitcher for my fridge, and I run the water through the water pitcher, and when I test the water after it's been filtered by the water pitcher, there's no noticeable signs at all of chlorine. So a good water filtration system, so whether it's a Life Straw or the fridge style clearly filtered water pitcher, you can just run the water through either one of those before drinking it.
Yeah, that water pitcher you mentioned, I've been doing some research on that and it looks pretty impressive. We'll link to it in the show notes so people can take a look at it themselves. But, they were able to dump some Gatorade into it and it come out clear.
Right.
So it's taken out all those electrolytes. It's taken out all those colors.
No, it's leaving the electrolytes in.
Oh, did it?
Yeah, it
Okay.
takes out all the chemicals and it leaves the healthy electrolytes in.
Mm.
And they did the same thing with a Brita filter,
Hmm.
and the none of the color came out. So it's it's a pretty impressive water filter for sure.
So basically, you're saying that if people are saying, "Hey, I'm just going to use a Brita filter," that might not be their best solution.
Well, I'm not saying
Better than nothing,
it's
but
better than nothing. I'm not saying it's bad. I'm just saying,
there's some
like
more better technology out there
like
to
everything, there are different options, and it's one to definitely consider. And
right.
also, where the where the clearly filtered might have an advantage over the Brita filter right now is, it is a $69.95 value, but for right now, and I don't know how long this offer is going to last, but there's an offer right now where you can actually get one for free as long as you cover the shipping and handling. And I think the shipping and handling is $9.95. So you can save $70. I'll definitely find that link to that offer and link to that in the show notes. So if you want to pick up a free water pitcher plus $10 shipping, which is a great deal, just click the link below and fill out your information. And as long as supplies are still there, they'll send one your way. And just to full disclosure, this isn't an offer from us. It's from someone else in the survival community, but equally as good.
Yeah, definitely check it out.
So what about if you have a saltwater pool?
Yeah, saltwater pool is it depends on the concentration level. Most of the concentration levels in backyard saltwater pools are so low that you don't really have to worry about it. Um, Much, 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 much lower than seawater. Okay. For those who don't know, you should never drink seawater to try and hydrate yourself. Most people know that. Most people don't know why though, right? They don't really understand why. So I'll just give a really quick description of why, just so you have that in your arsenal if anybody ever asks. But when you drink seawater, it's the concentration of water to salt is so high versus the water that's actually inside your cells. So when you consume that water and that high concentration salt water sits outside your cells, it pulls the fresh water out of your cells to try and balance as best it can the salt to water ratio. Your body naturally does that on its own. But what's that doing? That's pulling water out of your cells, and then you eliminate it through your waste, and you actually speed up the dehydration process. That's why people who are lost at sea and then they start drinking seawater, they go nuts, they go crazy, and they end up jumping off the boat and drowning and whatnot, right? They lose their, because they drank that water and it caused ill effects to their health immediately. So never drink seawater. But in this case with pools, the water concentration is so low typically. And if you were in doubt, if you weren't sure, if you tasted it and it's like, oh man, it's kind of salty. I'm worried that this is going to be, counterproductive here. You could set up some solar cells or boil it and condense and remove the salt and just gather the water part. So it could still be used. It's a little more of a process. So
Right. Like any water in a survival scenario, you're going to want to think before you drink, right? Do I
right.
need to purify this? Should I boil this? Should I run this through my water filter? Do I put a purification tablet in? Don't just get a water source and just start gulping it right away, unless of course you're minutes away from or seconds away from death. So, you
Right.
know, before you drink, think.
And if you have these backyard pool options, now's the time to figure out what works, right? So
Right.
then when you get in the scenario, you have your plan and you're confident in it. You don't have to second guess yourself and you can just move forward and stay hydrated.
Now this next one on the list, it kind of takes me back to the 90s. Yeah, well, it's been a long time since I've seen one of these around. So,
Yeah, they're like dinosaurs. There's basically none around anymore, but I'm sure there's a few. But waterbeds, everybody remembers everybody had a waterbed at one time, I think. Basically, if you think about it, it's just a massive bladder of water.
that's
It's
exactly what it
got
is.
more water in it than your water tank.
Now, what happens
So
if you filled that up in the 90s?
what's that?
What happens if you filled that water bed up in 1998 and it's still in your basement today? Do you want to drink that water?
Again, purify it, filter it, and drink it. Not my first source choice within my house, but push come to shove, absolutely. If you got a great filtration system, which obviously we've talked about, obviously we recommend, you got a great purification system, then yeah, you're gonna drink it if your back's up against the wall, right?
Yeah, I agree.
And if you have a waterbed and you're smart, you get rid of that water periodically, right? Every 2 years or every year, you put some fresh water in there because it becomes part of your plan, right? It
Yep.
becomes part of your bug in just in case last resort option, right? So if you're smart about it and you do it that way, then the water isn't from 1990. It's from 2014.
Right. It's just like cycling your food supply or your gas.
Right. And actually, they have these systems that are basically mini water beds and they fit into the size of a regular tub. And so what happens is if the shit hits the fan and hey, this is one of those events that you just know something's up and you want to store a bunch of fresh water, you go and you attach it to your tub and this bladder just sits in the bottom empty. You turn it on your taps and you fill the thing up and now you have a tub worth of water in this bladder, right? So a very neat concept. Something some people, I've seen them do that. They have those, and that's a great plan.
Yeah, they are, and it's extremely economical. You can get 100 gallon water storage system for your tub for $26 on
Yeah.
Amazon with free shipping if you're a Prime member. So we'll definitely link to that below, both to the Amazon Prime membership so you can get the free shipping, and you can just sign up for the free trial and then take advantage of the free shipping. And we'll also link to the reservoir, the 100 gallon reservoir that fits in your bathtub.
Mhm.
$27, $26. I mean, that's money well spent. Now I've
Uh,
marked off 10 on my tally here, so that leaves us with one final unique source of water. The
yeah, yeah. This one most people know about, but it's important to take advantage of it when the opportunity arises. It's the rainwater collection system.
right.
So we all have gutters. The water comes down the sides of our house and goes on to, goes away from our homes. You can collect that. And a lot of people do, every day nowadays, just as normal practice for watering plants and things of that nature. But, when the time comes, it's something that, you know, you're going to want to collect anything that hits because you don't know the next time it's going to rain. And if you're bugging in and things are pretty bad, then this could be a major part of your water replenishment plan.
Right. And again, it's something that somebody might look at and think, oh, having these rainwater collection systems is going to be an expensive, undertaking. But I'm just hopped on Amazon, taking a quick look, and 50-gallon portable rain barrel, $35.81 with free shipping. So,
Yeah.
there's more expensive solutions than that, and maybe more elegant solutions than that. But this is a way, if you want to get started with under $40, this is a way where you can get 50 gallons of rainwater stored in your backyard. And so I guess maybe just one caveat we should place here on the rainwater collection is that in some states it is illegal to do.
It
So
is.
just check with your local jurisdictions and, decide if you want to, do it or not do it. But, it is illegal in some areas, and we'll leave that decision up to you.
If it's legal, then in your state, then there's no reason why you shouldn't do that today.
Right.
If you live in a state that it's illegal, then my recommendation is get your stuff together, have it ready to go. It's not that big of a job to, you know, either cut your gutter and then slide a barrel under it. No big deal, right? So just have the stuff ready to go, because to be honest, if it's a shit hits the fan event, no government regulation is going to matter at that point when it comes to getting water, right? You'll have to make that judgment call, and you know, if it's not a shit hits the fan event, then you could get in some serious trouble with the law. But I'll let you decide that. But that's the way I would handle it. And then another note of caution about rainwater is, it depends on where you live. If you live anywhere in kind of like a lot of high traffic and stuff like that, it can contain a lot of heavy metals in the rain, and chemicals from like vehicle exhaust and stuff like that. So again, you want to purify and filter any water coming from your roof.
Right, exactly. And, I guess I've never tested this myself, but I do have a friend who, she's got a really green thumb and has a massive backyard garden. And I know she collects rainwater to water her garden with. And she says that the rainwater is a lot better than just the water off your hose in terms of watering that garden. So, whether that's true or not, I don't know. But, her garden is pretty impressive. And the vegetables out of there are some of the best I've ever eaten, 100% organic. So just something to think about. And again, you can't do that if you don't have the system in place.
That's all 11.
It's all 11. All right. Well, so just to recap, there are a lot of unique water sources that are in your home. You don't need to go find the local pond and local stream, although you should know where those are. But, there are some easily accessible water sources like your hot water tank, your toilet, your hose, your emergency water drinking storage, and your bathtub. That's kind of a bonus one. That wasn't really on the list, was it?
No, the waterbed made me think of it.
Right. Well, I guess it's no. So there you go. That's a bonus one. Definitely check out some of the links that we're going to link to below in the show notes. Definitely think before you drink. Decide if you need to purify it, boil it, use purification tablets. Ultimately, we're all here to stay safe and survive. So
my hope from this podcast, we incorporated some of the basics of survival, like, filtration and purification and all that. Like, my hope is that somebody walked away with it. Oh, I didn't even think of that, right? That was a water source that I wouldn't even thought of. But now that I've listened to this podcast, that's something that nobody could ever take away from you again, right? If you are ever your back up against the wall, I hope the odds of you having to use one of these water sources is pretty low. But if you did, you're going to be happy you listened to this.
Yeah, no, exactly. And, I am literally on Amazon right now ordering one of these 100-gallon bathtub reservoirs. So there you have it. There's 11 water sources plus one bonus source today. Definitely check out some of the stuff we've linked to in the show notes. And until next time, prepare, adapt, and overcome. Stay safe, my friends.